Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into a classic fable that, honestly, resonates for generations. It's a fascinating story about a freezing river, a brilliant logical trap, and ultimately, the true value of hard work. We're going to explore how a simple tale of endurance turns into a profound, highly practical lesson on fairness, logic, and human motivation. And you know what? It applies just as much to our modern lives right now as it did way back then.
So let me ask you, have you ever put in the hard work only to be denied the credit on a technicality? I mean, just imagine it. You endure a grueling, seemingly impossible task for a promised payout, only to have the person in charge snatch that reward right out of your hands because of a ridiculous, entirely fabricated loophole. Think about that sinking feeling at work when you pull off an absolute miracle of a project, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the boss moves the goalpost so they don't have to pay out your bonus. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Well, that precise scenario sets the stage for our source material today. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Freezing River Challenge. This lays the groundwork for the monumental task at hand. The terms of this challenge were incredibly simple, but man, they were physically punishing. The ruler Akbar gives a desperate beggar a very straightforward proposition. Step 1, enter a freezing river. Step 2, stay there for the entire night. Step 3, earn a reward. By setting it up this way, Akbar establishes a clear, undeniable test of endurance. There's literally no ambiguity here. You do the time in the freezing water, you get the reward. It's a pure transaction of suffering for a better life, kind of like taking on the absolute hardest assignment at your job with a guaranteed promotion on the line.
And here is where the human spirit really shines through. Against all physical odds, fighting off hypothermia, total exhaustion, and the overwhelming urge to just give up, the beggar actually successfully completes the challenge. He survives this torturous night. How? Well, he was entirely fueled by the hope of this life-changing reward. He held up his end of the bargain flawlessly, executing exactly what was asked of him. He put in the grueling work.
But then, the narrative suddenly shifts. Let's look at Section 2, the distant lamp loophole. Morning arrives, the beggar is freezing but victorious, and Akbar interrogates him. Akbar wants to know how it was even humanly possible to survive a whole night in a freezing river. The beggar, completely transparent and honest, admits, "I constantly looked at the glow of a lamp in a distant place." He candidly admits his psychological survival tactic. He didn't have a warm suit, he didn't have a fire, just his mind. Just like someone imagining the relief of a vacation to get through a miserable work week, he focused his mind on a faraway light to keep his spirit from breaking.
But listen to how Akbar interprets this. It's wild. Akbar seizes on this innocent admission and twists it entirely. He issues a formal ruling. Using a distant lamp to stay physically warm in a freezing river constitutes cheating. Akbar literally declares that the beggar extracted physical heat from a faraway flame. I mean, it's an absolutely absurd logical leap, but because of this manufactured, ridiculous loophole, Akbar unjustly denies the beggar his rightful reward. He just moves the goalposts right at the finish line to get out of paying up. Which brings us to Section 3, Birbal's suspended Khichdi. Enter the defense attorney of our case study, Birbal. Birbal is Akbar's incredibly clever advisor, and he sees this terrible injustice happening right in front of him. But he knows he can't just yell at the ruler. He has to brilliantly demonstrate the flaw in Akbar's logic. So, Birbal stages this elaborate scene. He tells Akbar he's going to prepare a rice and lentil dish called Khichdi, but he intentionally leaves a massive, impossible gap between the cooking pot and the heat source. He suspends the pot way up high near the ceiling, and he places a tiny little fire all the way down on the ground. The distance between the fire and the pot is huge. It's completely impractical. It is the ultimate act of theatrical, malicious compliance. Predictably, Akbar comes along, sees this ridiculous cooking setup, and falls right into the trap. He looks at Birbal like he's totally lost his mind, wondering, how could a fire so far away possibly cook the Khichdi? Akbar quickly points out the physical impossibility of heat traveling across such a huge distance to cook the food in the pot. He completely dismisses Birbal's setup as pure foolishness because, physically speaking, the heat just cannot reach that far. And boom, this is Birbal's mic drop moment. He looks right at the ruler and says, if the man managed to get warm from a distant lamp, then of course this pot can cook. With that single sentence, Birbal perfectly mirrors Akbar's own flawed reasoning right back at him. He takes Akbar's ridiculous ruling about the beggar and applies it to the strict laws of physics right there in front of him. The crucial point is laid completely bare here. It's a flawless logical trap. If Akbar's logic dictates that a distant lamp physically warms a freezing man, then he absolutely has to accept Birbal's logic that a distant fire physically cooks a suspended pot. If you truly believe the first impossible scenario, logic says you must accept the second. Birbal has completely boxed him into a corner where Akbar's hypocrisy is just undeniable. After such a masterful demonstration, something has got to give. So let's wrap this up in Section 4, Rewarding the Effort. Confronted with his own mirrored absurdity, Akbar actually handles it surprisingly well. He doesn't get angry. Instead, he graciously concedes the argument. He laughs. He genuinely understands his mistake. And most importantly, he finally rewards the man. Akbar realizes in that moment that the distant flame was a psychological motivator, a beacon of hope, really, rather than a physical heater. The beggar didn't cheat physics. He conquered his own mind. And that brings us to the core truth of our source material today. Effort always deserves to be rewarded. Genuine struggle, incredible endurance, and true perseverance must be honored. Whether it's surviving a freezing river or pulling off a massive project at work, when you put in the grueling effort, you earn your due. It should never be dismissed on fabricated technicalities or bad logic used by those in power just to avoid giving credit. Thanks to Birbal's brilliant intervention, fairness ultimately won out. So, before we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a moment and really think about something. What is your distant flame that keeps you going through the freezing rivers of life? When you are navigating your own incredibly difficult challenges, a brutal week, a harsh setback, whatever it might be, what is that internal spark or distant hope that motivates you to just keep pushing through the night? Keep that flame in mind, guard it well, and always make sure your hard work is rightfully rewarded. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.